afternoon, everybody. We're certainly excited about being on somewhat uncharted waters. I think this last Saturday through the weekend is indicative of college football. Anything can and usually does happen, and that's what's great about college football. I know our players and coaches, we're extremely excited about this opportunity to represent the mountain side. We're playing against a really good football team that represents the other side, and I think you have two really similar programs, even though we're from different regions of the country. And so, a couple of comments about last week's performance. And normally I start out and talk about a couple positive things that occurred during the course of the game. I don't want to say that list is short, but we're not going to talk about many positive things that happened. There's a lot of things that were disappointing, and we've got to get our arms wrapped around that in pretty short order. Obviously, we need to play better, and we will. We need to credit New Mexico. I thought New Mexico had a really good game plan, and it was senior night, and they had 29 seniors. And credit Coach Davey and that staff, they came up with a good plan, not only on offense, but in defense and the kicking game. And so New Mexico won all three phases of the game. There were way too many uncontested plays on defense, and when I see that as a coach, there's a couple things that come into play. Certainly our focus and attention and preparation, but then also our game plan. I always get a little bit frustrated when you hear a coach say, well, we didn't execute well, the players didn't execute well. Well, that's not all on the players. If you hear somebody say the players didn't execute well, who's in charge of execution? And so as coaches, we need to own some of that poor performance, and we're going to take our share along with our football team. I do believe we've got really good leadership within this football team. They're a galvanized group. We have bounced back before, and so we'll need to do that. So a couple things that I think going into the game we're concerned about. Anytime you win an emotional game, and the San Diego State game the first time around was emotional, and I always talk about the difference between enthusiasm and emotion. As emotion, you're going to peak high and you're going to have a low. When you're enthusiastic, you're able to go out and play at a high level all the time. Some of those things come into play with maturity of a football team and really understanding how to separate the two. And so we came off an emotional high. I think we hit an emotional low. And a lot of people are going to make a case in point, well, going into the game, we knew that we were already in this game. I think that two things. One, that minimizes New Mexico's effort, and also it colors over our lack of performance. And so we're going to get our arms wrapped around that. I would unfortunately like to announce that DJ May will be gone for the year, and so disappointed for that. That's another senior along with Chase who've added so much, and we'll need to regroup, rally around DJ. I don't know the final outcome, but I do know he's not going to be available for the rest of the season. So we're at that point in the juncture of the seasons where injuries do come into play. When I look at this game, I've watched the San Diego State-Colorado State game. I think the game was closer than what the score was. When I first heard the score, I went, wow, and then I watched the tape. I think there's a couple plays here or there that had some ebb and flows. Probably more so a closer game than what our game was, even though the point differential was larger. I think what you have here is a classic case of two really good football teams who both have earned the right to play for the championship. It's kind of like a Rocky movie. You're in the 16th round here, and that's part of college football. And what's great about football, it's a physical game. I say it's a man's game played by men. And the last team out there that comes up is going to be able to hoist that championship trophy. And we're excited about being here. We're really excited about being at home. I can tell you my experience with a playoff crowd, and people, it's been so long since we've been in one. A playoff crowd's different. I can tell you a playoff crowd is different. Those people that show up, you know what, the weather's not going to be great, and they're probably going to be out there either in their snowmobile gear or their hunting gear, and they're going to hoot and holler. I'm in hopes we have a huge crowd, but I know this. The people that are there are vested, and they want to be there, and it's going to be a great collegiate atmosphere. So we're certainly excited about that. So that being said, I'd like to open up any questions anybody has out there.
So, Craig, nothing to do with the fact that you guys, before you even got dressed that day, the performance, you're already the division champions. You're not going to attribute anything in regard to the performance having to do with anything concerning that.
I didn't say that. You're trying to phrase some things. To say that that's why it all happened,
right.
That's a discredit to New Mexico, and we got to play better. To say that some of those elements didn't come into play, that's fairly short-sighted. I'd like to think that, you know what, we're a mature enough team to move past that. The facts of the matter are we're not. And the ebbs and flows and highs and lows, we've had them. We had a couple times here. What we've got to do is we've got to find a way to, all those bad plays are out, and in a short amount of time get the good ones in to have a chance to rally around, to have a chance to win.
Were you concerned going into the game with your team that, hey, we are the champions already, maybe this might affect our performance a little bit?
As a head coach, I was concerned about coming off. I knew when we walked off the field after the last performance against San Diego State, it's hard to get up again, and particularly on the road. I was concerned about that. I was concerned about being late in the year. And I addressed to our football team, our mantra all along was to be 1-0. To say that had no impact, you know what, I'm sure it had some significance, but I think it's a crutch to say, okay, the reason why we gave up all those yards and all those points was because we were going to be in the championship game no matter what. That's New Mexico came in, and Coach Davies done a great job with that program, and they flat took us to the woodshed. Now, what we need to do, you know, in a short order here, is get ourselves, when they come in, our players come in today, get ourselves ready to get playing championship football. Last Saturday was not an indication of that. And, you know, I can quote Lou Holtz and even do a great limitation is, every Saturday you bring a different football team to the stadium. And that's pretty good, isn't it? A little levity by guys around here. There's some merit to that, and I've coached 34 years. You do, and you know what? You have young people and their ability to go out and take care of business. You know what? Wasn't there, and to say it's all on those players, we're not going to do that as coaches. We all know that's a team loss, and so a lot of elements. But I think to just say, okay, the reason why we gave up all those yards rushing, or the reason why we had an abysmal performance offensively, was because we are going to be in the game. We got to own that. If we don't recognize why we played the way we did, then we're not going to have a chance to win. And so, that being said, we'll move to the next question. I think you're up.
Craig, with DJ, obviously, you know, Tim Kama there. I know he's played certainly,
Yep.
and you can see Cash's name. Maybe rotate those guys, see how practice goes. Do you have an idea of how you'll kind of manage that?
We're going to see how practice goes. I cut you off here, but we're going to see how practice goes as the week goes along. Certainly, Tim is an older player, played quite a bit. We think Cash has got a lot of ability, and so this will be a different type of game. Offensively, our opponent's offense, it's going to be 180 degrees difference. I mean, it's 180 degrees difference. And so how we position our guys and what we do is not to say some of the elements of what we were confronted last week aren't going to be there, but there's quite a bit of difference. And so how we choose this guy and how we rotate our guys is going to be determined how practice goes.
Coach, what are some of the challenges or maybe benefits to playing a team twice in the span of just 3 weeks?
Challenges, I can tell you this, when you beat a team, it's hard to beat them twice. It's not like it's not doable, but you look through past years, that one's a tough order, and then trying to strike a balance of saying, okay, we're going to do the exact same thing we've always done. I think that can be a little short-sighted, but you don't want to change drastically because we came out ahead last time.
Coach, at what point this season did you think that something like today, this week, would be possible? Was there a point where you said, we got something here?
When we reached the halfway point, I looked and I saw some of the makeups of what was going on, particularly with Josh. We saw some good things, but his dynamic ability to extend plays, and then you you saw more athleticism, more speed, and so then also you saw the makeup, the composition of injuries. You know, at that time we were fairly healthy, and so you said, okay, we got enough ammo here, we got enough players. Plays are going to go one way or the other, and if you look at a couple of our wins, i.e. the Boise game or the San Diego State game, yeah, I saw us having a shot, and I told our staff that guys, we're going to be in the hunt here. At the beginning of the year, you're looking to say just how, okay, what kind of progress you're going to make. Then you find out once you get in the middle, at the tail end, now you try to tweak some things a little bit with your squad to give yourself a chance to be in this game. Now the challenge is going to be, okay, now we're in it, let's go in it to win it.
Craig, you talked about after the UNLV game that you were concerned that at this juncture of the season, the team was a little bit worn down by this point. Now you're without 3 defensive starters, key defensive starters going into this championship game. Are you concerned a little bit about how much your team at this point, still young, still thin in terms of depth, how much more you might have left in the tank at this point of the season?
Yeah, you are. Any head coach that's been seasoned, even though you're a tough guy and you're going to play physical football, you know there's only so many train wrecks out there. And so how we practice to get ready for a physical team is really going to be a challenge. We need to be fresh at kickoff, but we need to know what we're doing. Then you're trying to rep a replacement for DJ. That's always a challenge. But that's why we have coach on our shirt. That's why we're going to make some measured decisions this week on how we're going to attack San Diego State and our mentality with our players. Our players need to be fresh, confident, and energized to play this ball game. And obviously, I don't think we've been here since 1996. That's a lot of water under a bridge. And we got one shot. We got one shot at this deal. And so that comes down to us as coaches to maneuver this thing around to put ourselves in the best position to win it. We're in it to win it. Okay, great, we're here. Let's win it. Let's win it.
Coach, I know you mentioned you didn't want to go through a bunch of positives in the last game, but it seemed like kickoff team was much improved from the San Diego
Thanks
State.
for bringing it up. Yeah.
Just,
I'm going to tell you what, after the game, and even yesterday, the glass was pretty half empty, right? Yeah, that was positive. Cooper kicked the ball well, and we covered better. This could be a heck of a matchup. I mean, obviously, not obviously, anytime a coach says obviously, he's overstating the obvious. We had major issues with kickoff return, and that's got to be shored up to give us a chance to win. We're going over, where are we going to? I guess you got to have mics.
Okay. Craig, we know the slogan that you've used since you got here, those who remain will be champions. From your standpoint, how neat is it to see this group of seniors get to really live that, get to play for a championship?
Well, it's great to see our seniors be able to play for a championship because they'll all tell you they remember we put that sign up. And the course that we've taken, our program, has been a hard course. It's not for the faint of heart, and many of those guys that were part of that group are gone. And so it's really rewarding to see our players that have stuck with it have an opportunity, but it's going to be more important for those guys to be able to go out of here and win a conference championship ring. And that's huge. And until you've really been there and been to that mountaintop, you really don't know. And that's where you take that bold step of saying, okay, hey, we're in this thing, now let's win it. And so to give our seniors an opportunity to win it is special, but now there's going to be a separation to say, hey, not a lot of people remember second place. I can tell you that. How many people remember all the Super Bowl runner-ups? That ain't how it rolls. They remember the champions.
Coach, you mentioned the game against CSU, and Wyoming didn't have their best game either, but they also, Wyoming showed a great second effort, and I don't think that was there in SDSU. So what does that tell you, if anything, about the state or condition of San Diego State right now?
You know what, for me to make comments, first of all, Rocky Long is a really good friend of mine, and how that football team is managed, I have an unbelievable amount of respect, and so that mindset and observations, I disagree with you. You know what, I know this, come Saturday, you're going to see two teams that are gonna step on that gridiron, you're gonna see great football and two really competitive teams that are gonna fly and get after it. That's why I'm excited about the fans that are choosing to come, because they will see two get after your football teams. And what the score is and the ledger at the end, I don't know. Rocky probably doesn't know, but I dang sure can tell you this. Their group's gonna be ready, and so are we.
Great. Couple questions. Is there an update on Sydney and his injury issue? And then, you know, the last couple of weeks, teams have put points on San Diego State where they had kind of dominated defensively. Are you seeing anything on film to what teams have been able to exploit, I guess, in the last couple of weeks?
I would say Sid would be doubtful. We'll see where he's at. We'll know a little bit more, Robert, as the week goes along. You know, what I think Colorado State was able to do is I've watched the tape. You know, they were able to mix the run and pass up pretty effectively and caught San Diego State. I know a couple times they caught them in a couple one jailbreak for a touchdown, a couple big plays there. So it wasn't, you know, it wasn't a team that's one-dimensional, ability to throw and run. And that's always a challenge. I don't care what defense you are. I was a defensive coordinator. A team can throw and run on you. It's hard. And I think this too. You know, Coach Davey and I talked about it before the game. Colorado State's gotten better. I mean, he said, hey, they have gotten better. And kudos to Coach Bohl. I mean, that team has improved as the years go along.
Craig, now that you guys have had some time to look at the tape of the past game, what did you see that you guys, because when you played Air Force, it's a very similar offense to that, I believe, that New Mexico runs. You played well against the Air Force triple option, but obviously the results were different this weekend. What did you do differently during the Air Force game that you didn't do in this game against New Mexico?
Yeah, we were abysmal. I mean, you looked at the rushing yards and everything else. We were much more assignment conscious against Air Force, and while the offense, there's triple option, there's other elements that are unique and different, and while we adapted a scheme well against Air Force, and there were some things that Air Force did that they didn't convert on that people from the media probably didn't see, but we saw some issues. But the schematic things, while they run option football, were somewhat different. And what did come down against Air Force, we were much more disciplined, much more assignment bound. Guys were where they were supposed to be doing what they were supposed to be. All those uncontested runs, that's misassignments. And so when you have misassignments, that doesn't come down to physical ability. That comes down from the shoulders up. And that's where schematics come into play. You know, how the scheme was and then how we executed the scheme. And like I said, to put it all on the players and say, hey, we didn't execute. The players got to execute. You know, we got to coach it better. And we'll learn from it. That's a pretty significant overall project there as far as improving performance. And it's unacceptable. But I can tell you this, so we linger in that rearview mirror. We're going to let one team beat us twice. We got to learn from some elements that are going to come into play, and other things don't have anything to do with the cost of blood or what's going to happen Saturday. So it came down to assignments and execution. And I also think there's a reason why they're number one in the country in rushing. They got all those backs, and they can go. If you miss, it's to the heart. And they spread the field vertically and horizontally, and they get one-on-one matchups. And if you're not in the right place, and that's what happened. And where we played really well against Air Force in that area, there were some similarities, some differences. It was really a poor performance. Yes?
Coach, you're going to have a lot more media coverage this week with the championship. How do you not allow the outside noise to pollute your players' minds too much?
Yeah, how much media exposure we're going to have, I can't tell you. I think you're going to find our coaching staff's pretty seasoned from that standpoint. However, we're going to have some younger players with media. We'll talk to them. Tim Harkins will talk to our guys too. But that's one of the things when you step into this stage, things change. You know, we talked about as each game goes along, it's bigger and bigger. Well, this one's one of one of the biggest games that Cowboy football's had in a long, long time. And I think our players need to embrace that and recognize that's all part of when you're playing in championships, things change. You play in a national championship, really changes. And and so we're excited about this.
Coach, in games this year that have gotten out of hand one way or the other, Josh has still kind of stayed in there every play in garbage time. Is that just more because of his kind of competitive nature, I guess, or what's sort of your mindset on, you know, when to kind of bring in the backup when the game's out of hand?
You saying I should have put the backup in?
I'm not saying it. I'm just
That's what you're saying. Just go ahead and say it.
I'll say that people on Twitter ask me why you did.
Thank you. That's always a point of contention. You know, when you're an emerging football team and you're developing a competitive nature, there's an attitude of never giving up. Those things run through my mind, yeah. And so all the people that are out there on Twitter, yeah, I looked at it and said, okay, but what kind of message does that send? Okay, Josh is more important than the starting offensive tackle, and more important than Johanna Gaffon. He's out there trying as hard as he can. And to pull Josh Allen, I'm going to tell you, he's going to have an issue with that too. Now, I got discouraged with the number of hits he was taking, and some of them were preventable. Some of the things he's got to do to make sure I know sometimes he thinks he got an S on his chest, but there's only so many train wrecks, as I said. I was concerned about that. Good news is all the people on Twitter, Josh Allen's starting this week.
Craig, did you have the
Craig Bohl 1, Twitter 0. Go ahead.
Did you have any, you mentioned he took a couple hard shots, and did you have any issue with that on the sideline? Did you say anything to Coach Davey when you met him after the
No,
game? Nothing?
not at all.
You didn't have a
No.
problem with it at all?
No, you know what? Defensive players are going to be aggressive. I did call a timeout. I don't know if anybody's ever seen me call a timeout, and it was very purposeful. I had a discussion with the head referee. That was I thought, a really cordial, civil dialogue, and he gave me his interpretation, and then we moved on. But no, you know what? I think the Mexico guys played really hard, and when you're a defensive coach, those guys are going to be aggressive, and there's rules that we have, and the officials manage the game by those rules. And so, no, but Coach Davey and I congratulated him. He congratulated us and wished us best of luck. We've known each other many, many years, and there's a lot of mutual respect there. So that didn't come into play. Now, I did, like I said, I don't know how many people saw me. I burned a timeout and asked the head referee to come over, and we had a pretty good discussion. Any other questions? Do we have? We got a question on the line here. I know we have a couple people on the line, so I'll be more than happy to open it up to anybody that's on the line.
Coach, I could just ask.
Coach, this is Keith Kelly over in Cheyenne.
Yeah, Keith.
The Mountain Division in this conference is really dominated. If you look at the crossover records, the west side. Why do you think it is? Is it a cyclical thing? You know, is there anything to that playing in a tougher division like you guys have this year?
Well, I'm going to be real guarded about saying which division's tougher because we're all in one conference. You know, we have a great deal of respect for San Diego State. It has been my experience being in other major conferences and Power 5 conferences. There's certainly ebb and flows through the years of which side would be perceived as stronger. And, you know, where 1 year or 2 years, one side may be more fortified and have a better record against the other side, and then it somehow flips. And so it's a great league, a lot of really good coaches in it, and a lot of really good players. And so every year at the beginning of the year, you get your schedule, and you know what, as coaches, we just go out and play what's on our schedule. So every game, you know, we believe is a real big challenge. Yes, ma'am.
Coach, I understand you probably answered these questions earlier, but just a couple questions is, how excited are you for this football team, knowing the big turnaround you made from last year and the position that you're in for a title?
Let's not minimize the progress we've made. You know, sometimes when you're in the midst of the moment, and maybe Dino, some of us every coach, you're living for the next game. And so, you know, sometimes you don't have an opportunity to sit back and take a bigger picture and go, wow. You go down to the media days in Vegas, and the guys over there, we were unanimously picked last. I mean, it was last, and all of a sudden you recognize it. But, you know, at the middle of the year, we're in a different place, and so you seize the opportunity. And I think complacency and being satisfied can really be damaging to a program. You need to stay hungry and recalibrate your goals and how you see yourself. And I believe, done that with our football team, that, you know, our goal is to win the Mountain West. At the beginning of the year, I think players talk about it. Yeah, you know, you've got all the teams in the league, we want to win it. When you start getting in the hunt, now it's where the rubber meets the road. Now you're in it. And so we've recalibrated, and we're excited. And also, I think it is, by hook or crook, whatever, we're playing at home at War Memorial Stadium for the conference championship. And, you know, for all the things that you hear and all the speculation, where is the athletic program, where is the football program at? We're playing for the Mountain West Conference Championship at home. And that didn't come about because of a coin flip, didn't come about, we earned it. And I want to say thanks for our fans that are coming, and we're going to be excited about that. Is that all?
Just one more, Buster. Yeah. Knowing that you had a tough battle with this team before, and also you're going to have to bounce back from this past week, what will the message be in the locker room before you guys head out to the field for this game?
Well, that's a long ways away. I always joke, whatever it takes to eat, I'll eat a worm. I got some text messages from some pretty important people that it's against the rules to eat a worm before a game. So, you know what, we'll cross. Sometimes those messages are heartfelt. And one of the neatest things about being a head coach is there is no one out there other than a head coach can understand what it's like when you walk in right before a game, any game, and particularly a game like this. And so most of the time, there's some things you kind of have in the back of the mind, but you called, you know, the majority of all my colleagues out there, so much of that's just it's a passionate message from your heart. And sometimes those things are pretty impactful, and sometimes they're vastly overrated. Any other questions? Okay, great. Exciting. Oh, yes. Yes,
I'm sorry. This is Todd Leonard in San Diego.
Hi, Todd. How's the weather in San Diego?
You know, it's chilly. It's about 58.
Wow. All right, come on out.
Yeah, Craig, I wanted to ask you just a couple of things real quick. One is, when you are picked to finish last by SSE Media, Media Days, what do you know, your kids know that. Your kids know what the low expectations are. So how do you reverse that, and how did you reverse that message?
Well, that's a real credit to our players, and particularly the senior players. You know, in Proverbs it says, as a man thinketh, so he is. And, you know, those messages that you hear from the outside, those aren't really going to resonate unless you believe them. And I think our players, quite frankly, derived a great deal of energy and a chip on their shoulder to prove the pundits wrong, the experts that are in the media, which I do want to acknowledge this, the people that are here and that are online that cover college football, we need media in college football. And I know some coaches can be real cynical of people in the media, but you know, it's your chosen profession. You cover our sport. College football has never been more popular than it is right now. And without the people that are in journalism, you know, it's a big thanks from all our coaches. So the fact that we were picked last, I think our players use that as some motivation. And they saw themselves as much better than last. And I think that's part of why you saw this team never really quit, never give up, and come up with some big wins.
And then, Craig, the other thing is the success that you had at North Dakota State, and in particular the championship teams. Can you kind of touch upon what you feel like
this team kind of compares to maybe, not compares physically necessarily, but just as a group, as a team that's gotten this far?
Yeah, there's, and you're always guarded about comparing teams because the men that comprise those teams are all so special, and every team is unique. But there are some similarities. You know, there was one team that we had that was everybody had picked on the outside looking in. I can tell you the last game of the year was a game that was supposed to move the team on, and we went out and we played a team and we lost 3-0. 3-0, and everybody had picked that was the team was doomed. The last regular season game, they lost 3-0. And I remember Coach Vegan walking off the field, our play caller, and somebody told him that he needed to call some of the plays on that other side of the sheet. And he said, well, you know what, the guy's probably right. But that team bounced back, and they patched things together and went on to have a heck of a run. And so we're gonna draw on some of those experiences. You know, when you get on this turf, when you get in playoff mode, and we're in playoff mode now, it's a new season. It's all new season. All the old things, all the bets are off, and it's a different place. So definitely some of the experiences that we can draw from the past.
Thanks, Craig. Appreciate it.
You bet. Okay, any other questions?
Craig, real quick, any thoughts on the two Mountain West Conference coaches who were unfortunately fired in the last?
You know what? Yeah, those guys are good friends of mine, and you know, thanks for bringing that up. Unfortunately, that's part of our profession. The one thing that I know through the years, there's two kinds of coaches: those who have been fired and those who are going to be fired. And the thing that you learn is how you operate, the integrity that you have, how you are with your players and the staff. Those are things that are going to be things that are priceless. And both of those two men, you know, have been relieved of their duties. That's the nature of college football. I'm sure you're not going to hear them saying disparaging remarks against their institution, and they'll move on. And what you do, hopefully those guys are going to pick up the whistle and go coach someplace else. And I'll see them again. But I'm a realist. You know, that's part of where we're at. And what you find is the old saying is typically good things happen to good people. And those guys have great solid character, and they'll move on and be in a better place. Thank you for bringing that up.
Thanks, David.